Hi, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well. I may very well be talking with myself, which I can honestly say would be the very first time in my life. Um, in any case, I'm going to talk, and I know at least the birds will hear something going on in this room. Uh, so the topic is Morocco's development model. And when we say model, I think it's important to distinguish between hello, Mohammed. Nice to thank you for being here and thank you for saying hello. When we're talking about model, we mean vision, intention. Um, it's a formulated idea of how we're going to advance development for the people. And so naturally, when we're talking about a model, when it's translated into the world and real experience, to what extent does it reach the intention of the model? To what extent does the real experience actually fulfill the intention? And so we're going to focus on both. What is Morocco's model, and what process is Morocco going through in order to redefine its model? But also say some, reflect upon that by the real experiences um, of at least things that I've seen or read about or experienced at the High Atlas Foundation, or generally um, you know, uh, reflections that are commonly felt in terms of how development is impacting people and how people feel about it. And if I could ever just reflect some of those views and my combined with my own observations. But I feel like I'm rambling already, and I am. Um, the the thing about Morocco's existing model now, it's searching for another. There's 6 months, from what I understand, to when a proposed, I guess, new approach or a redefining of the existing, or you know, it's unclear when we say Morocco's developing another model. Of course, it can't negate all of the frameworks and structures and things in motion. So it doesn't mean then a reforming of the existing. But time will tell about that. But when we're talking about Morocco's existing model, we're talking about multiple frameworks that together integrate or um, build benefits from each other, and that also combined, they plot a path forward. And so, what are some of those components we can talk about? And it may be just me and you, Mohammed. I don't know who else is on here, but there's some fundamental frameworks that guide human development in Morocco. And I would say, and maybe we'll talk about how they came into being. Maybe we'll talk about them chronologically in terms of how they were, in terms of the years they were brought about in Morocco. And I think, I mean, without focusing on this, I do think, and cases showed worldwide that there was a reconciliation process at the after the ascendancy to the throne of His Majesty King Mohammed VI. And without getting into what that was, and I'm not a student of that, but I will say that reconciliation is a hugely beneficial basis for development to grow. So, from a developmental point of view, and so many other points of view, there's reconciliation is really essential for national unity and healing and partnership and trust and national identity and so many things. Hello, Hajar. But developmentally, it's also very thoughtful to all nations have reasons to reconcile uh, in terms of what's going on internally, and certainly in the United States, how I could say as an American how I pray for my and from my heart and wish most deeply for reconciliation processes in the United States, and such a lift of life and all lives and the lives that are hurting the most especially we would see a great future for everyone and first those who need it most and are have reason um, uh, to benefit from the past and what has happened. And so reconciliation reconciles the past and builds development opportunities forward. Um, but but following that is the laws that opened up the opportunity to create civil society organizations, and I believe that was in 2002, and that's major, major, major. That the Moroccan people can organize and create their entities, and they can have visions of missions based on what the people who founded those organizations would like, and so that opportunity to form your organizations and to associate and create change is hugely important and essential to what is the Moroccan model. Um, and maybe Hajar Mohammed, anyone else? Could anyone else say anything, or does this have to be a monologue? Well, I'll keep going. The third, I mean, there are others, but I would say of course, the National Initiative for Human Development in 2005, and not only because it's a multi-year, multi-billion-dollar program to um, help finance, achieve uh, local projects, community-level initiatives, and that's hugely important. But in the design or the announcement of the national initiative, it also gave a very encouraging, uh, you know, I think very helpful definition of sustainable development, and it included not just environmental but also economic, social, cultural, political, financial, historic, geographic. It really um, drew a picture that sustainability depends on so many facets of our lives, and that all need to be part of building sustainable development. It's environmental, but it's also, you know, touches on all other sectors of our society. Um, and so, uh, continuing on, because what else am I going to do? Uh, it's We can say then decentralization in 2008, which um, in the roadmap that emerged over a series of descriptive and guidelines of how decentralization will unfold, taken from the public discourses of His Majesty the King of Morocco, we can draw a very progressive, I think, creative approach to decentralization, which emphasizes the community level, emphasizes subnational partnerships, multi-sectoral, and also keeps the national level engaged. And all of that, so multi-sectoral partnerships, national level engagement, all of that to support community initiatives. Again, a beautiful design. I missed an essential one, the 2004, and that's what happens when it's just me talking to myself. I miss a very essential, critical component, and that's a 2004 400 plus statutes that were added to the Moroccan Family Code, the Mudawana. which not only offered a range of you know uh, basic rights, of course, but also developmental, and in terms of full participation in at all levels of decision making, and that's an opportunity that must be realized by everyone. And uh, women's marginalization needs to be absolutely ended, and full opportunity and freedom and choice and those kinds of things are to the fore, and as they ought to be everywhere. Um, uh, and so 2004 was also a critical uh, central pillar of Morocco's approach to development. 2005 we said in Diash, 2008 we said decentralization, 2009 the communal charter uh, establishing that municipalities need to create development plans based on people's participation. I am talking way too much, and this is hard, but that's 2009 is hugely important because it squarely requires municipalities to engage communities in their design and in the people's prioritizing and managing of change, and having their own associations, which 2002 opened up, and ENDH of having opportunities to fund their projects, and a decentralized context which promotes community movement, and then 2009 requiring uh, uh, municipalities to do it, and of course Muduwana with empowerment and full inclusion of women and girls, and ensuring a a a fully acknowledging, empowering decision-making process that meets the interest of everyone involved. And so this is really the makeup. Morocco's design, when you look at all these together, is really based on community organization and movement and inclusion and participation and management and organization and funding, and uh, creating the change that local people together in a genuinely collaborative, partnership building, consensus building way, you know, that is the Moroccan model if you take these components and relate them together, and they work well beautifully together. But what is the reality? Is the reality enjoyed by some of these intentions? Yes, by some. Is the reality enjoyed by the majority? Not. It's certainly not in rural places, and I don't, and numbers don't underscore that, which is why, again, Morocco should be commended by going through this reevaluation of its model. You know, it's a national dialogue around, hey, it's not working. What should we do now? And so, in that thought, I'm not a necessarily a I don't believe we need to change the existing model. We need a model to implement the existing model. We need to have, you know, clear approaches of how we're going to catalyze change across all the different communities of Morocco. How are we going to ensure that you know, the local associations that are created are um, are vibrant and active and have the capacities to you know, properly manage funds and the systems in order to you know, manage an organization in all its different parts and be able to build external partnerships, domestic, you know, at all levels, but also international. And so, you know, what can we do to make the existing model more effective, which ought to be Model 2? Model 2 ought to, you know, guide the way to achieve what is Model 1. So, bon courage. Thank you, Moulay Abdurrahman. Um, I did write an article on this, and I'll put it in the chat box. Um, Let me say this about the question I just raised, which is what practical strategies can we do in order to fulfill what Morocco committed itself to in Model 1, which is community driven change? Well, what catalyzes a community development process? What do we need in order for participation of the people in the design, in the action planning for a project, for projects, for change in their community? What needs to occur in order for that participation and dialogue to ensue, to unfold, to happen? Well, it doesn't happen spontaneously. I'm sure it has happened without external or internal catalysts. But you know, because it's the policy of the land, because it's in the municipal charter, doesn't mean that it gets implemented. It gets implemented when there is a facilitator. Um, a facilitator helps coordinate a meeting, helps ensure that it's truly inclusive, helps to make sure that people who may not have land or who have land or that everyone's involved of all ages, of all gender groups. And in traditional places, does that mean that women and girls and uh, men sit apart? Yes. Uh, have we seen in rural places where they plan together over time? Yes. Um, but what matters is, what matters too in this process is that there's gender awareness that's built so that each gender group understands or the priorities of the other. And so um, that's part of the dialogue consensus building experience. But it needs that third party facilitator. It needs someone to, make sure everyone knows everything and and all voices are heard, as well as other functions like where can we potentially get funding and who's a potential partner for this kind of project and how do we get this technical input or perspective integrated into this water initiative or into this construction or whatever it may be. And so they facilitate the process going forward by uh, via communication within a community and to assist the community in their own growth. Of course, facilitators' roles evolve as community development within an area unfolds, and it becomes probably less of a central role. But in the beginning phases, it's really key. Um, and so the challenge that Morocco has is that there are not enough trained facilitators. Who can these facilitators be? Well, if municipalities have to create development plans based on people's participation, that means the members of municipal councils ought to be trained on how to do that and how to facilitate community dialogue and how to create action plans based on priorities of different gender groups and you know that people of that community feel. And so that's one group. Rural teachers would be a great group to train as facilitators in participatory dialogue and development because they're in rural places. They're typically young. They want to create. They want to be of help and service and benefit where they are, and so they would be wonderful. Of course, members of local associations. Most villages now in Morocco have a village association. And so its members would be wonderful to participate in these kinds of uh, building our skills in assisting group dialogue. And of course, there are others, some others, of cooperative members, um, international organizations and domestic associations like the Highest Foundation. You know, what's interesting is if we want to be a teacher, we ought to be trained in these techniques of group uh, assisting group dialogue. So it's not just in the development field where these skills are beneficial to us. And in fact, the more we learn about them, the more we realize that they're in all different sectors and disciplines and um, sort of, you know, they're across the social sciences and in many applied sciences, or maybe even all. I mean, wherever there's a need to uh, support group decision making, well, participatory methods and its facilitators can be helpful and relevant. So the other part of it is, so we need more facilitators. And by the way, we learn facilitation by actually doing it. So it's about experiencing it. It's not about, I mean, are there things to learn in a sort of, a workshop kind of way, removed from a community setting? Yes. But we'll never learn to the extent we need to without the actual doing. And, and, um, and scientists would say that about scientific methods. We can learn the methodology all we want, but it's when we apply it when we actually understand what they are. And that's the same with participatory methods. Um, uh, we gain ability to apply them by applying them in real settings and building our skills by situations we're in. And so, therefore, at the same time, we not only build our skills, but we help communities create their action plans. So, as we train, it actually has a benefit as well. And I would say that to you, whoever writes academic papers, try to make sure your academic papers actually have a tangible benefit in people's lives. And more and more programs and universities are open to those kinds of approaches. And so the other part of it, I'll say, I'm 22 minutes into this monologue. The other part of it, I'll say, is we need to implement the projects, fund the projects that communities identify. So we talked about facilitators and creating action plans and creating, and then imagine if there's 40 villages in a municipality and each village creates its action plan, and then you create a municipal plan, and now those 40 associations are federating, and so we can, if there's more and more federating across um, municipalities, within municipalities, and we can also federate um, between or among uh, municipalities, intermunicipality. But it starts, every village has to go through its process. And I will say the Highlands Foundation has done that across the municipality. For example, the rural commune of Tupkal, where we created a municipal development plan, which I believe was, I refer to this one because it's, I believe it was 5 or 6 years ago and they still use it. That's the thing. I mean, when you really go through the process with each village and it's based on priorities, then, um, that base of data will be something that you refer to. Does that mean that it's guiding all decisions today, 5 or 6 years later? No, but there's they'll know if they address the priority of clean drinking water or not. And if that hasn't been addressed, you can rest assured it's still a challenge today, or the issue of irrigation, or the issue of cooperative building, or water at schools. And so it this kind of information remains helpful for a long time. So, but funding it is key, and that's always the challenge. And it's frustrating because oftentimes we hear that there is funding, but just not enough good proposals, and it's so unfair because the people know what they want, and but do we know about the funding opportunities? Do we have the capacity to write a highly technical document? Um, uh, you know, for people in rural places to access national or regional funding sources is really, really challenging. And so I would say for those funding sources, to get to where the people are and take proposals, not just written, but orally, oral applications, and come see their projects and or co-create, develop together the proposal. But there's absolutely no truth I've found that there's a shortage of there may be a shortage of proposals in the format that in the very specific format that a donor wants, but there's absolutely no shortage of projects that would be transformational for the people. And um, and the expectation that we can just wait for proposals on the donor side, or not make the process completely accessible as is needed. And if money gets unspent or returned to the national level or not spent the way it ought to be, it's really up to the donor to be more um, um, engaging directly with the communities and assist them so they could access your funding. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, for these reasons, it's I'll just conclude by saying this, that whether Morocco creates whatever form or whatever recommendations the committee comes out with, it'll be very hard to get away from the reality this is that sustainability dictates, which is that communities need to drive the determination of projects in order for projects to be sustainable, in order for them to be maintained by the people, in order for them to generate long-lasting benefits. It must come from the people and be managed by the people, and no model could ever uh, alter that reality. And so the question is, well, how do we manifest that reality? We manifest it by catalyzing it and by funding the projects that come out of that process. And unless we do that, good luck to any model. The service and the giving of the best I can to Morocco over my adult life is because I believe entirely in the projects of the people. I believe entirely in Morocco's model, that it is designed to mobilize uh, the community level to create what they most want developmentally, and that if it were to achieve its vision, if the nation were to, then it would be an example for the world, for the continent, for and inspire other nations to do similarly. And so it's a hugely important um, purpose. Uh, Morocco's sustainable development is for Morocco and beyond. Morocco's fulfillment of its model is for Morocco and other nations. It's truly meaningful because the model, the initial Moroccan, the model we are currently under, is beautiful, but we're not experiencing it enough, not nearly enough. And there's this painful un you know loss of human potential, that if the current model were implemented well, we would see Moroccan product processed, agricultural, and shared with the world. We would see farmers cultivating more because they conserve water better and are actually the processors of their own product. We would see their viable, strong cooperatives, achieving more than they are with domestic and international certifications. We would see rural girls going to middle school and high school at without the horrendous fall in participation after primary that we see in all rural parts. And so um, there's incredible. Morocco's model is incredibly special and worthy and deserves to be implemented the way it's calling for. And I hope to be as helpful in my life, and that certainly the Highest Foundation's hope and all of its staff and volunteers and so many hundreds, if not thousands, of servants just like us, and tens of thousands of community members. Everyone wants the fulfillment of the Moroccan model, and so it's just a matter of getting the support and confidence and belief and resources to achieve it. So if there are any comments, I'd be happy to take it. If not, then and you heard this for 30 minutes. I hope you feel you're glad you spent the time. Um, and just thank everyone. I'll just hold on for, say, 10 or 15 seconds, 15, 20 seconds, and see if there's any other message. Oh, wait, I need to scroll down. Okay. Uh, Important subject. Thank you, Mulay Hassan Al Aluni. And thank you again, Abdurrahman, and any of the comments. But just I wish everyone well. And الحمد لله هنا في المغرب، وكان ديروا اللي ممكن في المغرب، ديال المغرب، ديال المستقبل ديالو، ديال بنادم ديالو. وإن شاء الله غادي نكملوا المسيون ديال المغرب كلنا مجموعين وديما. لا يعاونكم. Thank you everybody.